How's it, everybody? The Orthodox Church of St. Theoroa is named after a missionary who ventured to another nation to proselytize his faith, and he was allegedly born in Nomasburg. The church quickly became large as the town grew from the prosperity of the Enfield Locomotive Shipping Yard and saw thousands of converts over the years since its founding. It had two major renovations, the first being a complete remodel of the current building and the second a major modernization of the church, which included connections to the electric, water, and septic lines offered by the municipality. A dormitory was constructed on top of the side building that ran adjacent of the central fellowship hall, where housing was provided to the homeless, as well as providing residence for church staff. As the church grew, it started up a graveyard service, offering a place of rest for the town's deceased. Mausoleums had to be built to account for the humidity and the moist ground in the region for better preservation of clients who want to better preserve their relatives. However, in later years, the city suffered an influenza epidemic that left too many people deceased for the church to properly bury, so they built the crematorium and cremated whoever they did not have space for, and performed special ceremonies to leave the deceased in a peaceful rest in those unfortunate circumstances. While it is rumored that the church had associations with the order of Bankitu-makerism, head priests over the years have denied this, as they profess they hail from a different faith that came to Nomasburg with their immigration waves. Today, the Orthodox Church of St. Theoroa services the locals in a variety of special occasions, not exclusive to weddings and funerals, as the population increased and it became a place of religious diversity. Multiple faiths can be explored and embraced for spiritual enlightenment, just as the saint of its namesake practiced hundreds of years ago. I would like to say a big thanks to B. Carter for the name and the backstory. With that, let's get into today's episode. How's it everybody? Welcome back to the Nomasburg region. Sanctum Gamer here, and today we will be starting the first real residential area of this new town that we have been building. This is something that I have been putting off for quite a while because I wanted to get the bare bones and the high level structure of the city down in terms of the major roads and where I wanted the main shopping district and all those things to sit. The main aim of this town was to center everything around the railway yard that is very, very prominent in this town. But now that we've got a lot of that down, so the rail yard is almost all but done. We've got a lot of the commercial spaces also down. Now it's time to start upping the population. So probably over the next episode or two, maybe even more, we will focus quite a lot on expanding the residential spaces and growing our populations as best we can. So we started off there with some fire stations as well as some police for this area, and then right next to it is the first real sort of residential block. So just to the bottom of the screen there is where the zoo sits. So for this side, so this area on this side of the rail yard, I wanted it all to be centered around the zoo. So immediately off of the rail yard, you've got the zoo, and then we've got these residential areas that sit immediately next to it. Now, I said when we're working on, was it Charlestown? Somebody mentioned that I was using the same housing assets And I had said that once we got into this town, I was going to try and start using a few more assets just to get some variety going. And because this town is meant to be older than Charlestown and the surrounding areas, I've got the houses not just sitting in a perfect grid, so I've got them slightly angled. As you can see, each time when I place the houses, I just go in with move it and I just twist them around a bit, so it makes it look a little less organized. And you will often find that in towns that are slightly older, well, at least where I grew up, a lot of the houses don't just sit perfectly straight to the road, but instead they all have slightly adjusted angles to them. In fact, my house is actually one of them. Where I stay, the house doesn't actually face the street directly, but sits at a bit of an angle, and that makes it it gives it a nice older look to it, I think. So yeah, this entire residential space, every time I put down a couple of houses, I'll just adjust them around a little bit just to break up any grid from forming. And then here I thought I would put a little sort of exchange, I suppose. So there'll be a bus station here, and right to the bottom of it will also have a tram stop. So it'll be a nice sort of switch point, if there's such a word. I don't even know what to call it, but a nice tram bus exchange spot will sit around here. And the road going to the top left will be leading to where the university is going to be. So we'll have a tram line that will run through here that goes straight to the university, and then we'll have a shuttle bus that comes through here as well, going sort of towards the bottom of the screen to feed the residential areas that will sit in this space. And then at this point now, we start working on what is the outskirts of this town. So it's the start of the farmlands, but nothing too heavy. Just wanted to put a couple of small sort of subsistence farming type farms around here, just to show that from this point on, the town itself has actually ended. But then as you cross the highway, we will have the university. I also wanted to keep the space between the residential areas and the highway quite bushy or quite forested, and that's why I get all these trees. I love this mountain grass asset. It's actually a prop, so you'll see it kind of around the rocks. It's like a big asset that you put down. It's very big. It looks like grass, but it's actually a prop, so it covers a large area, allowing you to create what looks like bushed up forestry much easier and cover like much larger ground than you would with a normal tree asset. And then in between all of those, just create the farmland, so a mixture of these farm decals together with the ground textures that I just paint all over the place. And then keeping up with the whole idea of having abandoned warehouses and all that, I put all of those down. These wireframe warehouses are a nice fit for that sort of stuff. And then continuing the bike network, like I've mentioned, I'm going to keep this bike network up as best I can. So this bike network is going to go all the way into the town, and then we're going to join it up with the one that we created as a tunnel back in what I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago. So this is gonna go all the way around this avenue and join up to a bike lane that will basically tunnels under the railway yard and then connects to the other side of this town. So yeah, from this point on, we will finish off the farmlands in this space. We'll put down these irregular roads just because I do not want a grid style town anywhere around here. And then basically fill this entire space with residential areas. And then once we're done with all those houses, it's really nothing special. It's just houses with bush and trees and all of that stuff. And then once we're done with all of that, then we will move up and build the massive abandoned or forgotten industry that it was really an afterthought when I started this. It was meant to be a much smaller build that just ended up being very, very big. But I guess I'll talk a bit more about that when we actually get to it. So for now, I'm just going to keep quiet a bit whilst we expand out these residential areas. Let some music play. And then I will come in once I start working on the actual abandoned factory. But just before that, I'm not going to be building any schools in this area, right? I want this to be purely residential. You can imagine there might be some creches and stuff like that, but they are being housed or they are being conducted from people's houses. It happens a lot in my area, so you can imagine that to be the case. We will have a school in this area, but the school will be kind of towards the bottom of the screen on the other side of the avenue. That's the plan. So the school will probably come in a future build, but for now, I think the residential areas will do as they are. All right, let's let some music play. right, so at this point we start working on this old abandoned factory that I spoke about earlier. Now the intention was to actually have a slightly smaller looking building, which I was honestly not able to find. At least in the time that I spent looking on the workshop, I really couldn't find anything that looked old enough for my taste that would be a perfect fit here. So the idea was to have just a factory that sits here that has been abandoned. It's old, it's dilapidated, it's basically seen better days. And I wanted it to look like, somebody struck gold or something in this space, and this massive structure basically got built. And from that, the wealth that came from whatever mining occurred here was so nice and so good that they built this factory here. Now originally I was not going to build any of these areas where the mining is. So this is meant to show like they had dug underground in this area, and they had this rail line, well, not a rail line, but something that you could move rail type things on. If you look at a lot of these mining things, they've got these rail like networks that goes all the way underground, which the shovel, everything that is dug and mined into, and then that all gets wheeled out. So that's the idea behind here, is that we've got this rail that goes underground into whatever the mines were, and then you have these conveyor belts that were used to carry things out of the mine. So to get that look that things were actually being moved around here, I got these conveyor assets, as well as these, I think these two things are like little turbine stuff type things. I forgot what they are called, but placed them here just to show they were used, at least back then, to like give some kind of power to the area and so on. But the combination of these assets, I think, just made it look like something was actually happening here. It's busier than it actually is. And then put all these overgrown grass assets to show that this place is completely abandoned, but people probably still frequent here just exploring. There are those people who love exploring abandoned buildings and stuff like that. So people like that basically find joy in coming to this place and just randomly exploring. Now, when I built this originally, this was the only place that I had created a tunnel going under the actual factory. But then when I looked at the size of the factory relative to what I had built, it just didn't match up, right? The building was just too big for one tiny little tunnel. And so I redid this and expanded it out a bit to have a tunnel that we just built, that's the top left. And then I added this one as well to show that it had multiple entry points into the underground, that all of this mining was basically occurring. And then again, I put down all of these conveyor belts. I tried to put them in such a way that it at least made some sense, that we had loaders here that would load the stuff into the belt. The belt will roll all the way up and then all the way up to the factory for it to get loaded onto trucks or whatever and then get shipped away. And all these rocks I used to make it look like there's a cave or a cavern or something underneath there, and that there was probably some kind of massive rock here that has been exposed as a result of all the digging and mining that was occurring, and the actual factory got built on top of all of these mines and then expanded into the rock formations that were exposed as a result of all of the mining that occurred. And then putting all these overgrown grass bushes all over the place, because the whole idea is that this entire place is completely abandoned, it's completely unused. Putting down all these cracked decal assets, all of these mud assets, and we're gonna put some overgrown bushes on top of all of that as well, just to show that the whole place is not used. So whoever owned this piece of land, or whoever owned this factory, even though they've stopped doing whatever they're doing, they haven't actually sold off the land for it to be reclaimed either by the municipality or by the people that live in this area. So this thing just sits there abandoned and just completely useless to people. And then just to try and cover up all these rocks a bit, just to continue to get that overgrown look, I try and put as many trees and bushes as I possibly can. It's very hard. A lot of the trees that I had that look any kind of old are not big enough to cover the entire rock formation, so I did the best that I could. And then on this side, again, just continuing a couple of roads around here, and the idea is that over here there was some kind of structures here. There were some storage areas that were used to store things maybe, or they're like barracks where workers would stay, or something along the lines is what this whole area is meant to be. I realized that I extended water and electricity here kind of pointlessly, really, because I can just convert those to procedural objects and I wouldn't have to worry about that. But anyway, yeah, it is what it is. And I'm putting these pillars just to make it look like they supported things at some point. And then this house that I kind of sunk down into the ground, I wanted it to look like the ground was eroding or soil was building up in this space, and now it's starting to completely engulf this building. So that was the idea. I think the overall look that I wanted, I kind of got. So I was pretty happy with it. And I'm gonna ask for a story for this. I think this is the type of place that will also do with a very, very awesome story. Look, I always ask for stories because I am not a very good storyteller. At least I don't think I am. And people have been leaving some awesome stories for things that we've been building. So big shout out to everybody who's been leaving stories. Really appreciate it. By the way, if you want somebody who can tell stories, you guys should check out a channel by Will CS. Builds awesome stuff and attaches stories to pretty much everything that they build. So you guys should check that out if you like storytelling. I think it's super awesome. But yeah, we'll finish off all of this with a few rocks, cover it all up with some bushes, and that will be that. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got a story suggestion for this place, please jump on the Discord server, drop a story in there, and I will really appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Keep safe, and I hope to catch you all in the next one. All right, have a good one and keep safe. Cheers, everybody.